Good morning, Acadiana, and thanks for tuning in to Local News Live, a production of AOC Community Media in partnership with the Acadiana Advocate. Every Monday through Friday, we're glad to bring you this community service of reading the news that the Advocate has printed. The Advocate are great journalists covering our Louisiana area and our Acadiana area specifically, and we're glad to be able to read you their great journalistic work on our airwaves. You can catch us every Monday through Friday between 9 and 10 a.m. on AOC, our TV channel, on our YouTube page at AOC Community Media, and of course at Cypress Street Radio, our online radio station. Just Google Cypress Street Radio or search for it on your favorite search platform. We could not do this without the generous support and volunteer efforts of our newsreaders, people like Mr. Daniel Rayburn, who I had the pleasure of meeting this morning. Good morning, Daniel, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you again so much for being here. Can't wait to hear the news this morning. I am going to go listen on Cypress Street.
All right. Good morning, Acadiana. It's my pleasure to be here today bringing you the news. We have quite a bit to get to today, so we're going to just jump right into our first headline. We're looking at an update today for COVID-19, the coronavirus. It starts with Edwards, vaccine coming this month. Acadiana surge may be slowing. Conflicting data obscures trends. It's brought to you by Ben Myers. Acadiana's fall coronavirus outbreak may be slowing, but test reductions and conflicting positivity data make it difficult to determine a trend line. 7-day caseloads dipped across the region in the week leading up to Thanksgiving, but test volumes declined at a somewhat sharper rate. The percentage of tests yielding new cases continue to rise, but the Louisiana Department of Health's regional positivity calculation dipped slightly. The Region 4 weekly caseload as of November 25th was 1,903, an 11.7% decline over the previous 7-day period, according to the state's date of test report, which is released every Wednesday. Test volumes declined 17.5%. The weekly reports show results by test date. They were released with a 7-day lag, but they are more accurate than daily reports that often include backlogs. The percentage of weekly tests yielding new cases ticked up from 10.3% to 11%, which is the highest rate in Region 4 since July 19th. Yet, the weekly positivity rate ticked down from 11.2% to 10.8%, according to the Health Department. Public health professionals calculate positivity in different ways, and the Health Department has previously said it calculates that percentage of tests with positive results, including from people who test positive multiple times in a week. That result is usually higher than the percentage of tests that yield new cases, but the trend lines tend to move in the same direction. Yet, the state does not publish the specific test data underlying its positivity calculations, making the calculations impossible to replicate even when using the state's method of calculation. For example, the date of test report on Wednesday shows that there were 17,527 tests in Region 4 over the week ending on November 25th, with 2,259 of them positive. That amounts to a positive rate of 13.1%, more than 2 points higher than the positivity rate the department published. What's more, the positive test rate increased from the previous week, when it was 12.3%, according to the state's published test data. But the state's unverifiable positivity calculations show the positivity rate is dropping from 11.2% on November 18th to 10.8% on November 25th. A query to the Health Department was pending Wednesday afternoon. Continuing coronavirus news, our next headline. State expects initial batch of 40,000 by Sam Carlin and Emily Woodruff. State and federal officials Wednesday said Louisiana could get an initial batch of 40,000 doses of Pfizer's coronavirus vaccine later this month as the state embarks on a months-long effort to end the pandemic, starting with vaccinating hospital workers and nursing home residents and staff in December and early January. Governor John Bel Edwards cautioned it is still too early to know exactly how many doses of the vaccine will come to Louisiana in the coming weeks. And top health department officials said there were still awaiting more detailed guidance on which long-term care residents and staff should prioritize. But the first tranche of vaccines set to take place shortly after Pfizer's vaccine and another produced by Moderna received emergency approval from the feds is coming into sharper focus. Edwards and Admiral Brett Grayor, a senior official in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services who joined the governor Wednesday for a news conference, said Louisiana should be in good shape to handle the cold storage and staffing necessary to deploy the vaccine to all who want it by late spring or early summer. Edwards said Louisiana is set to get 1.46% of the available vaccines in the first batch. This is based on pro rata share of each state's population over age 18. As of Wednesday, Edwards said the state expects to get 40,000 doses of Pfizer's vaccine in the first week, followed by another 40,000 the following week, most of which will go to hospitals that can accommodate the extremely cold temperatures needed to store them. Those will largely go to vaccinate frontline workers at hospitals, including nurses, doctors, cafeteria workers, and janitors who work with or near COVID-19 patients. However, Dr. Joe Cantor, Louisiana's top coronavirus response official, said not all health workers will receive the vaccine immediately. Only those working on the front lines of the pandemic are expected to be immunized before the end of the year. Shortly thereafter, an unspecific number of doses of Moderna's vaccine will be distributed to nursing homes, most of which will use CVS pharmacy workers to vaccinate residents and staff. Moderna's vaccine is likely a week behind Pfizer's in the approval process. In all, Grayor said that 20 million Americans will be vaccinated throughout year's end. It will be May or June before most people have access to the vaccine, he added. The first batch will send 6.5 million doses of Pfizer's vaccine across the country, he said. 6.5 million divided by the population is not much. It's a great start. We'll subsequently go after that. Louisiana officials likely won't have to alter their original plans for the first batch of the vaccines to make federal recommendations unveiled this week that advise states to prioritize not only hospital workers, but also residents and staff of long-term care facilities such as nursing homes. Cantor said the state was already planning to include both categories in the first priority group. Beyond that, much is unclear. Governor Edwards said he can't say when state prisoners will have access to the vaccine. There may be a lot of controversy surrounding who gets access to the vaccine after the first batch. For instance, an argument can be made for frontline workers, he said, but if hospitals are full, leaders may want to prioritize people with underlying health conditions that make them more susceptible to severe illness from COVID-19. Grayor said it's too early to say if Louisiana's high rates of comorbidities could slow down the vaccine availability for the rest of the population. Currently, people with certain diseases are prioritized for the vaccine. We're working through that, Governor Edwards said, of how highly prisoners will be prioritized. I cannot give you the sequence, the priority of every single group in Louisiana. The critical part is how we administer those vaccines early on, Edwards said. It's important we have the National Guard available to vaccinate people. National Guard troops have deployed 280,000 of the 3.6 million COVID-19 tests given in Louisiana to date, Edwards added. Cantor said the number of doses that will be available initially could change in the coming weeks, but he said that the federal government did not advise the state to save half of the initial batch of vaccines. Both Pfizer's and Moderna's required 2 doses taken weeks apart, and instead indicated more would be on the way to fulfill the required second dose. Before delivering the update with Edwards in Baton Rouge on Wednesday, Grayor, a native of Marrero, visited the employees of La Pharmacie who's handling testing. Grayor estimated the vaccine rollout will be smoother than the testing process, which at times has been unproductive because of nationwide shortage and long turnaround times. Quote, "We've got all the needles, we've got all the alcohol swabs, we've got all the syringes. We've got the world's supply of dry ice. We know where every negative 80-degree freezer is and all the liquid nitrogen. This has all been planned out," he said, noting the government has been planning mass vaccination efforts for 30 years and distributed 180 million flu vaccines this year. Some states, he says, are requesting help with one of the most precious resources. staff to inject the vaccine and track patients when they need to come in for the second required dose, which must be given exactly 21 or 28 days later, depending on the vaccine. He said he hopes that pharmacists like Stacy Paul Laborde, who runs the pharmacy with his wife, Robin, will be able to step in. Gruar said that the feds have enabled all pharmacy workers, including technicians and interns, to deploy COVID-19 vaccines to help ease the bottleneck. Although the vaccines are the light at the end of the tunnel, Gruar also pleaded with people to follow Edwards' restrictions, including wearing masks, avoiding crowded indoor spaces, and practicing social distancing. Louisiana's hospitalizations more than doubled in November, and officials are worried the Thanksgiving holiday could overwhelm hospitals if a surge in new patients shows up in the coming days and weeks. You are taking the right steps right now because we're at a very dangerous and critical point in the pandemic, Gruar said. You need to wear a mask when you're in public. Stepping away from coronavirus, our next headline is LSU in action on abuse case noted in 2018. Family of woman sent letters to NCAA and SEC. Brought to us by Andrea Gallo. 2 years ago, the NCAA, Southeastern Conference, and LSU's president and top legal counsel were all warned that the university's athletic department had potentially run afoul of federal law over its handling of allegations that a football player was physically abusive towards a tennis player he was dating. On October 18, 2018, letters to the NCAA and the SEC, from David Lewis, father of a former LSU tennis star Jade Lewis, told the governing bodies that LSU officials had repeatedly failed to take appropriate action after they were confronted months earlier with allegations that wide receiver Drake Davis was abusing Jade Lewis. Herb Vincent, the SEC's Associate Commissioner for Communications, sent a response on SEC letterhead dated October 26, 2018. In it, Vincent acknowledged receiving the letter, along with another one sent to the NCAA. The letters had been forwarded to General Counsel at LSU for proper attention, Vincent wrote. LSU's General Counsel at the time was Tom Skinner. Vincent confirmed Wednesday that the SEC had received and directly responded to two separate communications that David Lewis sent in fall 2018. Both times, the SEC told Lewis his information was passed along to LSU officials, Vincent said. Upon learning of the allegations contained in Mr. Lewis's initial letter, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey promptly informed LSU's president of allegations, and we also shared Mr. Lewis's letters to the SEC and NCAA with LSU's general counsel, Vincent wrote in a statement to the Advocate. LSU confirmed to the SEC that the university was conducting a Title IX investigation, added Vincent, who previously served as LSU's Senior Associate Athletic Director and Vice Chancellor for University Relations. Quote, we were informed that the assault allegations had been reported to the police and that criminal charges were pending. Federal Title IX laws prohibit universities and their athletic departments from discriminating against students based on gender. The rules were meant to trigger investigations into allegations of dating violence, sexual assault, and other harassment. LSU's Title IX investigation into Davis probed whether he had broken the code of student conduct in abuse of Jade Lewis. Although former LSU President F. King Alexander and other LSU officials had cited that investigation as evidence that they acted on Lewis's allegations, it's unclear whether they explored her father's additional claims that coaches and administration initially turned a blind eye to the abuse. David Lewis accused Michael and Julia Sell, LSU's tennis coaches, who are a husband and wife, of failing to report those claims, along with other administrators. A Title IX investigation into Davis alone would not typically have explored that question. Alexander, now president of Oregon State University, said through a spokesman Wednesday that he received the letter from the SEC and acknowledged that LSU's Title IX office had already commissioned an independent investigation into this matter. But his spokesman said LSU's current administration was better fit to answer questions about the scope of the Title IX investigation. Skinner said Wednesday that the letter from the SEC had no information LSU wasn't already aware of. He said his office had become aware of the violent relationship between Davis and Jade Lewis when LSU police were called to her apartment in June 2018, when Davis was accused of nearly choking Lewis to death. Davis was arrested 2 months later. Quote, as soon as the Office of General Counsel became aware of the allegations that Drake was being abusive towards Jade Lewis, we conducted a textbook investigation involving the District Attorney's Office, our Title IX office, LSU PD, and Student Affairs. Skinner said, we moved Drake from campus as fast as we could, and we tried to give Jade as much support as we possibly could. All we cared about at that point was making sure she was protected. Skinner said the coaches and administration whom David Lewis accused of ignoring his daughter's abuse were interviewed in the course of a Title IX investigation. Skinner was also present on September 10, 2018, when police interviewed a football player who reported that Davis was continuing to abuse Jade Lewis after his first arrest. Police arrested Davis again nearly a week later. An NCAA spokesperson said confidentiality rules prevented her from commenting on current, pending, or potential investigations. Mark Emmert, the CEO of the NCAA, to whom the letter was addressed, is a former chancellor of LSU. Davis Lewis's 3-page letter, co-signed by his wife, Rosaria Lewis, outlined 7 potential recruiting and other rule violations related to the LSU tennis team, and warned the officials about his daughter's abuse. Quote, it is with tremendous distress that I report the most grievous of these violations, he wrote. Not only do I believe there are violations of the NCAA rules / Title IX violations, but are also a complete violation of the trust that my family and I placed in LSU, the athletic department, and in the Sales as Jade's coaches. The Sales did not respond to an interview request. In a statement posted on social media since taken down, they have denied the allegations that they failed to properly handle the allegations against Davis. Allegations first aired in a USA Today investigation published November 16th. An arrest report says Davis punched Jade Lewis in the stomach in May of 2017 when she tried to remove some of her belongings from his home. The same month, Lewis played in the NCAA Women's Tennis Tournament and the NCAA Singles Championship Tournament. David Lewis wrote that he learned his daughter had been abused in 2017 during what was meant to be her only season on the LSU tennis team before she turned pro. David Lewis wrote that he called Mike Sales with the expectation that appropriate action would be taken, and this would be reported to Title IX. But Sale failed to take him seriously, he wrote, and the records LSU has provided about the Davis case do not show any action being taken to report his abuse until 2018. As planned, Jade turned pro in 2017, her father wrote in his letter. She returned to LSU in March of 2018 under the supervision of Sales, who had full knowledge of the abusive relationship she had been in with the aforementioned LSU football player. It is our understanding that Jade sought help from someone in the athletic department, yet surprisingly, none of this was brought to the attention of the authorities or Title IX. Evidence suggests Davis grew more abusive in 2018. He punched Jade Lewis so hard in April of 2018 that she had fractured ribs. Later that year, he choked her until she turned purple and threatened to kill her, according to arrest documents. Davis even admitted some of the abuse in an April 2018 text message to LSU's Executive Deputy Director of Athletics, Verge Osbury, in which Davis wrote that he hit her in the stomach, Osbury said. He called Davis afterwards and that Davis recanted. Osbury, meanwhile, did nothing further to follow up on it or to check on Jade Lewis, which multiple experts have said was a violation of Title IX and other reporting requirements. David Lewis wrote that he was shocked Davis was allowed to remain on LSU's campus subsequent to his release under certain conditions. Jade Lewis also said 4 of her LSU tennis teammates reported her abuse between May 2017 and August 2018 to Julia Sale, who, quote, knew the full truth and simply chose to stand by. We trusted the Sales when they recruited Jade, telling us she would be in a safe, healthy, high-performance training environment at LSU, David Lewis wrote. In retrospect, I wish I had realized that the willingness of the sales to manipulate or break rules in similar ways for their own selfish purposes translated into greater violations in their willingness to cover up rather than expose the escalating violent abuse of our daughter Jade. The damage done to our daughter and to us, her family, is irreparable. Additionally, our hope is that in reporting these violations, this will never happen again to any other prospective student. Davis pleaded guilty in 2019 to 2 counts of battery and 1 count of violating a protective order. LSU has commissioned the law firm Hush Blackwell to investigate the university's past handling of Title IX complaints, reports of sexual assault, and other issues that surfaced in USA Today's investigation. The results of that probe are expected by late February. Interim President Tom Gilligan has pledged to make them public. In the meantime, Osbury, the Sales, and others implicated in the scandal remain on the LSU payroll. All right. While we're in between headlines, just a couple of quick announcements. Vitalant has an urgent need for blood donations. Blood and palate donations often drop during the holiday months as fewer donors are available because of seasonal activities and illnesses. But this year, the outlook is particularly worrisome. With many schools transitioned to virtual learning and businesses in work-from-home situations, about 16,000 Vitalant blood drives have already been canceled for November and December. Currently, there is an urgent need for O-negative blood, the universal blood type that all patients can receive. O-negative donors can maximize their impact by giving a Power Red donation. We encourage donors to make an appointment by visiting vitalant.org or by calling 877-25-VITAL. That's 877-25-VITAL. Requests for mosquito control are now available through Lafayette's 311. The Lafayette Consolidated Government is increasing mosquito abatement efforts in the parish. An increase in mosquito activity is a common occurrence following a storm event. Citizens noticing an influx in mosquitoes in their area can now use the Lafayette 311 portal to request service. All subsequent requests are routed directly to Mosquito Control Services, the mosquito control contractor for the parish. Okay, and to jump back into the news today, our next headline, Blanco Center may seek funds from state. It's brought to us by Ken Stickney. The University of Louisiana at Lafayette is seeking new means to build a permanent home for the Kathleen Babineau Blanco Public Policy Center on campus, this time through help from state lawmakers. The university will seek approval from the UL Systems Board of Supervisors on Thursday to change its 5-year capital outlay submission, seeking funding for the 6,000 square foot center, which will be on the 3rd floor of the Edith Garland Dupree Library. The center is in temporary quarters at Abdallah Hall in the campus's research park. Quote, the physical space for the Blanco Public Policy Center will welcome researchers and historians, as well as policymakers, government officials, and others who participate in timely and relevant seminars and training, E. Joseph Savoy, UL Lafayette's president, said in a November 10th letter to the UL system president and CEO, Jim Henderson. That's what the Blanco Center has sought to do since opening in 2019 in its temporary spot. The center has hosted meetings and successfully sought grant funding, Savoy noted in his letter to Henderson. What it has not done is launch construction, which UL Lafayette wanted to do perhaps as early as this year. But the UL system supervisors will be told that the money the campus wanted to use for construction is no longer readily available because of costs associated with operating during the pandemic. Because of the aforementioned university budget concerns, the university's wish is to fund this project through the capital outlay system. Supervisors will be told in a meeting of the facilities committee. Project cost, construction only, will be just short of $1 million, supervisors will learn. Stephen Barnes, Blanco Center director, said in an interview in the spring that he met with the former governor before she died on August 18, 2019, following a long line of illness. She was clear about what she wanted most from the center that bears her name. A nonpartisan research and public issues effort committed to making Louisiana a better place, Barnes said. Barnes said she told him she wanted a center that would help identify solutions to the challenges that have plagued Louisiana historically and solutions to new problems that might arise. He said this week that what the center has delivered since. He said this week that was what the center was to deliver since it opened. Blanco, an Iberia Parish native, was the state's 54th governor, serving from 2004 to 2008. She earned a degree in business education at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, and with her husband Raymond, raised 6 children before she launched her political career in 1983, gaining election to the U.S. House of Representatives, the Public Service Commission, and then lieutenant governor before her lone turn as governor. In short, Thursday's committee action will involve approval for the change in the capital outline plan. Funding for the permanent Blanco Center will come through the legislature, which will meet April 12th to June 10th. Construction likely would not start until later in 2021. Barnes said planning was largely complete for the center in the spring, but the university had to pull back and reassess its ability to fund things that were not critical for delivering instruction. He said the university remains very much supportive of the center and has, quote, held true to its commitments to staff. We hope the legislature will prioritize this, he says. Our next headline. Justices debate split juries laws impact. U.S. Supreme Court weighs applying ban retroactively. This is by John Zimmerman. Whether the verdicts rendered by non-unanimous juries are less accurate than ones built on consensus, and just what accuracy means with a racially discriminatory law, drew a spirited debate in the U.S. Supreme Court on Wednesday as the 9 justices considered applying the court's recent ban on split verdicts retroactively. The justices, including famously Mum Clarence Thomas, and the court's newest member, Louisiana native Amy Coney Barrett, was vocal as they wrestled with where jury unanimity fits in the previous rulings that the court has refused to make retroactive, such as the right to race-neutral jury selection. Some of the same 6 justices who agreed in April that divided juries are unconstitutional, declaring a Jim Crow-era anomaly of Louisiana law a mistake, cast doubt on the case for applying it to inmates who have exhausted their appeals. In Ramos versus Louisiana, the justices roundly rejected the rationale for the court's 1972 rules in Apodaca versus Oregon, which had allowed for split verdicts in state courtrooms, but not federal ones. Still, Justice Neil Gorsuch, the conservative nominated by President Donald Trump, who wrote the court's 6-3 opinion in Ramos, noted Wednesday that a majority of justices also favored the view they were overturning precedent with the Ramos decision. The court in 1989 tightened the screws on this kind of watershed ruling that overturned precedent and can be made retroactive. So much so that the legal bar hasn't been cleared since. Justices on both sides of the aisle wondered at the point. Justice Samuel Alito likened such watershed rulings to the Tasmanian tiger, an animal thought to be extinct. He suggested that there were really no rulings left that might apply. It's pretty hard to see what might emerge that would qualify as a watershed ruling, Gorsuch said. Maybe we just give up the ghost. Justices Elena Kagan and Sonia Sotomayor from the court's liberal wing agreed that if jury unanimity didn't qualify, nothing probably did. Sotomayor was in the majority in the Ramos case, while Kagan dissented. Kagan was joined by Alito and Chief Justice John Roberts, both conservatives. Ramos says, if you haven't been convicted by an ununanimous jury, you really haven't been convicted at all, Kagan said. And so how can it be that a rule like that doesn't have retroactive effect? Louisiana voters had already abolished split juries by a nearly 2-to-1 margin in 2018, but only trials of crimes committed that year, by the time the Supreme Court ruled in Ramos, that but only for trials of crimes committed after that year. By the time the Supreme Court ruled in Ramos that the U.S. Constitution never allowed for them. Baton Rouge attorney Andre Bellinger, who argued the case Wednesday on behalf of life prisoner Frederick Edwards, said that the 1972 decision was so off base that it wasn't even a precedent and the justices could make it retroactive regardless. He described the Apodaca decision as, quote, in a unique universe of one. Thomas, who was nominated to the court by President George H.W. Bush, disagreed. We've had Acapulco on the books for quite some time. We've had Apodaca on the books for quite some time. In the cases we have actually, if not endorsed it, certainly saw it sitting comfortably, if not awkwardly, with our case law. Justice Brett Kavanaugh, another Trump appointee, highlighted the split verdict law's racist history and how it discriminated against black defendants and jurors, calling Edwards' trial a classic example of what we were concerned about. The East Baton Rouge Parish jury that convicted Edwards was made up of one black man, a Hispanic woman, and 10 white people. The panel voted 10-2 to convict him of murder. One juror recalled the vote splitting along racial lines, with the holdouts voting for a lesser charge. The jury was also split on counts of aggravated rape, aggravated kidnapping, and armed robbery. But although he was in the majority in overturning split verdicts, Kavanaugh told Bellinger on Wednesday that he was concerned, quote, that your approach would require us to chart a new path on retroactivity. The implications for other legal issues, such as the right to abortion, appeared to weigh heavily on Wednesday's questioning. Thomas also pressed Bellinger on whether ununanimous juries have been proven more accurate than split verdicts. Quote, how do you respond to the argument on the other side that statistics and the studies are a mixed bag and really doesn't move the dial very much one way or the other, Thomas asked. The data, Bellinger acknowledged, is limited to a little more than 50 exonerations, with as many exonerations from ununanimous verdicts as split verdicts under the same rules. Bellinger suggested that accuracy should be viewed in the context of law's origins as a racist Louisiana constitutional convention in 1898 and its continued desperate effect on black defendants and jurors. Quote, this type of system was set up for the purpose of not being accurate, for the purpose of not being fair, he said. And even though the state has tried to cleanse itself, it still has a negative, racially disproportionate impact today. Sotomayor seemed to agree in her questioning in Louisiana Solicitor General Liz Murrill, who argued against retroactivity. You dispute unanimity is necessary to increase accuracy in jury verdicts, but I can't think of any justification other than that for the unanimity requirement, Sotomayor said. The founders must have thought the process enabled accuracy. I don't know why I should second guess them. Murrill argued that nothing has proven split verdicts to be unreliable. While calling the Ramos decision very important, Murrill argued that the non-unanimous jury law was not a fundamentally unfair procedure, nor does the absence of unanimity seriously undermine the accuracy of the verdict. Some justices keyed in on the potential effect on local courts in Louisiana. Oregon and Puerto Rico should cases decided by split juries return en masse to be set for new trials. Murrill did not dispute research by the New Orleans-based Promise of Justice Initiative that found as many as 1,600 current Louisiana inmates were convicted by split juries. Murrill described the prospect of so many new trials should the court rule for Edwards as a heavy burden for the state. Bellinger said the numbers were likely closer to 1,000 because not all of them are likely to be able to adequately prove they were convicted by split juries. Taking a small break from our local and state news, we're going to look at our deaths for today and then a little bit of the lighter side. Deaths today in the Acadiana area include James Benoit, The funeral is at the Bellevue Memorial Park at 10 a.m. Sally Bourgeois with arrangements at the Cathedral of St. John the Evangelist in Lafayette at 10 a.m. We have Angela Gunther with arrangements at St. Michael the Archangel Catholic Church at 2 p.m. Farrell Rogers at the Sunrise Chapel at Walter's Funeral Home at 2424 North University Avenue in Lafayette at 2 p.m. And Nancy Rushing at the Green Lawn Memorial Garden Cemetery at 2 p.m. Looking at today in history, brought to us by the Associated Press. Today is Thursday, December 3rd, the 338th day of 2020. There are 28 days left in the year. Today's highlight in history. On December 3rd, 1984, thousands of people died after a cloud of methylene isocyanate gas escaped from a pesticide plant operated by a Union Carbide subsidiary in Bhopal, India. On this date today, in 1818, Illinois was admitted as the 21st state. In 1828, Andrew Jackson was elected President of the United States by the Electoral College. In 1833, Oberlin College in Ohio, the first truly co-educational school of higher learning in the United States, began holding classes. In 1964, police arrested some 800 students at the University of California at Berkeley, one day after the students stormed the administration building and staged a massive sit-in. In 1965, the Beatles' sixth studio album, Rubber Soul, was released in the United Kingdom by Parlophone. It was released in the United States by Capitol Records 3 days later. In 1967, a surgical team in Cape Town, South Africa, led by Dr. Christian Bernard, performed the first human heart transplant on Louise Washkanetsky, who lived 18 days with the donor organ, which came from Denise Darval, a 25-year-old bank clerk who had died in a traffic accident. In 1979, 11 people were killed in a crush of fans at Cincinnati's Riverfront Coliseum, where the British rock group The Who were playing. In 1992, the Greek tanker Aegean Sea spilled more than 21 million gallons of crude oil when it ran aground off northwestern Spain. In 2014, a Staten Island, New York grand jury declined to indict police officer Daniel Pantello in the July 2014 chokehold death of Eric Gardner, a black man who had been stopped of suspicion of selling loose, untaxed cigarettes. Pantello would be fired from the police force in August of 2019. In 2017, the second largest U.S. drugstore chain, CVS, announced that it was buying Aetna, the third largest health insurer, in order to push much deeper into customer care. So 10 years ago, this is our 10 years ago, during a surprise holiday season visit to Afghanistan, President Barack Obama told cheering U.S. troops in Bagram Airfield they were succeeding in their mission to fight terrorism. However, foul weather prevented Obama from meeting with President Hamid Karzai in Kabul to address frayed relations. 5 years ago, Congress approved a 5-year, $305 billion bill to address the nation's aging and congested transportation system. The bill was approved on a 359-65 vote in the House and an 83-16 vote in the Senate. 1 year ago, a 300-page report prepared by Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee found serious misconduct by President Donald Trump in his dealings with Ukraine. The report would serve as the foundation for a debate over whether Trump should be impeached and removed from office. A few of today's birthdays, famous ones. We have movie director Jean-Luc Godot is 90. Actor Nicholas Coster is 87. Actor Mary Alice is 79. The rock singer Ozzy Osbourne is 72. Country musician Paul Gregg of Restless Heart is 66. Actor Daryl Hannah is 60. Actor Julian Moore is also 60. Olympic gold medal figure skater Katarina Witt is 55. Actor Brendan Fraser is 52. Singer Montel Jordan is 52. Actor Royale Watkins is 51. Actor Bruno Campos is 47. Pop rock singer Daniel Bedingfield is 41. Actor and comedian Tiffany Haddish is also 41. Actor Jenna Dwayne is 40. Actor Brian Bonsall is 39. And pop rock singer-songwriter Andy Grammer is 37. Looking into the horoscopes for today, we'll start at the top here with Sagittarius, which is birthdays between November 23rd and December 21st. And it reads, "You'll accomplish the most if you work alone. An activity that will get you up and moving will prove inspirational. Set realistic goals and you will achieve your expectations." For Capricorn, which is December 22nd through January 19th. "Do your part and make a difference. How you deal with others will affect your reputation and encourage a promotion. Your leadership ability will shine and good recommendations will follow." Aquarius. This is for birthdays January 20th through February 19th. "Don't make changes because someone else does. Follow your heart and do what's right and best for you. Speak your mind and make it clear where you stand and what you plan to do." For Pisces, which is February 20th through March 20th birthdays. "Stick to facts, figures, and regulations. Pay attention to detail and negotiate on your behalf. There is money to be made if you do things properly. Ask for help if you need." For our Aries out there, which is birthdays between March 21st and April 19th, "Put your thoughts on hold. Stay focused on what you're trying to accomplish, and you will make headway. Don't let the actions of others cause uncertainty." For Taurus, which is birthdays between April 20th and May 20th, "Show interest in what others do. You will reach a personal goal if you speak on your own behalf and negotiate positively. An improvement in a meaningful relationship will unfold." For Gemini, which is birthdays between May 21st and June 20th, "Don't saddle yourself with someone's problems. If you let someone mislead you or come between you and your pursuits, you will have regrets." For Cancer, which is birthdays June 21st through July 22nd, "Handle business matters personally. A joint venture looks promising. A romantic gesture will prompt you to make a change that will improve your life." To the Leos, which is July 23rd through August 22nd birthdays, "Engage in activities that inspire you to get fit. Focus on things you love to do and promote better relationships with friends and family. Speak up and do what you do best." To our Virgos, "You have more opportunities than you realize. Take a closer look at your options and distance yourself from people trying to push you in a direction you don't want to go." Libra, which is September 23rd through October 23rd birthdays, "Information you receive will change the way you handle personal and professional matters. Refuse to let anyone put you in an awkward position. If you want something, say so." And finally, in the horoscopes for our Scorpios, which is birthdays between October 24th and November 22nd, "Focus more on your physical and emotional well-being and less on past events. Take action and get your responsibilities out of the way, then move on to something that inspires and motivates you." That's all for that today. We're going to look at a couple more announcements and then move back into our news headlines. So, this is that the Acadiana Open Channel teams up with the United Way of Acadiana for Learn United. The United Way of Acadiana has teamed up with AOC and other local educational groups for Learn United, bridging the digital gap to provide educational resources for households that don't have internet but do have television. The Learn United programs air weekdays from 8 to 2 on AOC 2, which is Cox 16 and LUS 4, and streaming at aocinc.org/watch. That's aocinc.org/watch. For the daily schedule and to submit content for the program, visit the United Way of Acadiana website, which is United Way of Acadiana, all one word, unitedwayofacadiana.org/learn-united. If you're feeling overwhelmed with stress, fear, and anxiety about the uncertainty surrounding this public health emergency, there is a special Keeping Calm Through COVID hotline you can call. This connects you to trained, compassionate counselors who can offer support and who can direct you to mental health and substance abuse counseling services. Trained counselors are available 24/7. All calls are confidential. Please call 1-866-310-7977. One more time, the number is 1-866-799-77. Okay, we're going to look at a few more headlines before heading into sports. So, this is an election update in Lafayette. In our headline, proposals would free tax revenue for general fund use. Lafayette voters to weigh two measures. Brought to us by Claire Taylor. Voters in Lafayette are asking to free up additional money for existing taxes for general operation. Two measures are on Saturday's ballot to rededicate existing sales taxes. They would not increase taxes, just allow more money to go to the city's general fund for operation, including emergencies such as hurricanes and the COVID-19 pandemic. The first is a 1% sales tax originally approved in 1985 and last renewed in 2001 that would generate about $36.2 million a year for the city. Currently, 65% of the tax revenue is dedicated to capital improvements such as roads, bridges, and buildings, with the remaining 35% going to the city's general fund for operating expenses and capital projects. If the measure is approved by voters, 55% of the tax revenue would be dedicated to capital projects and 45% would go to the city's general fund. The second measure on Saturday's ballot is another 1% sales tax collected in the city. Originally approved in 1961 and last renewed in 2001, the tax generates about $4.26 million a year. Like the first measure, the second would change the amount dedicated to capital improvements from 65% to 55%, and for general fund purposes from 35% to 45%. If voters reject the proposal and if voters reject the proposals, the tax will continue to be collected and the allocations between the general fund and capital projects will remain as they are. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday. And we have one more headline we're going to look at before heading into sports. That is, Stuller makes progress on recovering from Saturday's cyber attack. Company says customer information not compromised. By Adam Daigle. Stuller was hit by a cyber attack on its system early Saturday that has created a variety of problems for the company, a company official said. Danny Clark, president of the Lafayette-based diamond manufacturer, put out a statement to its customers Monday afternoon to address the attack. Customers can expect delayed shipments and intermittent phone interruptions as a result, he wrote, but personal information was not compromised because that data is not housed at Stuller, he said Wednesday morning. Phone services have been restored, he said. Quote, I'm happy to report that we have made significant progress on returning to normal business operations. And while there is more to do, we are getting closer and closer to that goal by the hour. Stuller, the largest fine jewelry manufacturer in the country, is taking online orders, Clark wrote. We cannot express how frustrated and disappointed we are that this has occurred at all, particularly during this crucial time for customers, he said in his statement. This week, you may experience several circumstances that are non-Stuller-like. We are feverishly working to return all services to our standard level ASAP. Stuller employed 1,263 people prior to the COVID-19 shutdown in the spring when it let go of an undisclosed number of employees following a 3-week period in which the plant closed but continued to pay its employees. And that's our local and state headlines for today. Now we're going to take a look into Lafayette sports, and we're going to be focusing on college football. Our headline, plot twist. In an interesting turn of events, Coastal Carolina's winning season puts Cajuns in peculiar spot heading to Boone. This is by Kevin Foote. In UL coach Billy Napier's first season at UL, his Raging Cajuns were fortunate enough to play Appalachian State in the inaugural Sun Belt Conference Championship game. After losing in Boone, North Carolina earlier this season, and the Mountaineers already being the established program, the Cajuns lost as expected, 30-19. At the time, the notion was it was a great experience nonetheless, one to be tucked away for future use. Then the Cajuns played Appalachian State twice last season. UL outplayed the Mountaineers for most of the game at Cajun Field in the regular season, only to fall 17-7. But again, UL won the Sun Belt West and got another crack at the Mountaineers in the league's title game. Only Appalachian State jumped on the Cajuns early and cruised to a 45-38 win. The frustration continued. The Cajuns were now 0-8 against the Mountaineers. For most UL fans with big dreams of taking the next step as a program, Napier's Cajuns just had to somehow figure out some way to beat Appalachian State to reach the top of the mountain. This was certainly in the minds of many fans and analysts throughout the offseason and as they began to break down UL's 2020 football schedule. In so many ways, this fall has been a breakthrough season for UL's program. It finally got the signature win, 31-14 at Iowa State, earning the program's first top 25 ranking since World War II. Along the way, though, a funny thing happened. A team the Cajuns beat 48-7 on the road last season, Coastal Carolina, somehow went from pretender to contender in a hurry by beating UL 30-27 at Cajun Field in mid-October, and then defeating Appalachian State 34-23 5 weeks later. Suddenly, the overwhelming need to beat the Mountaineers took a turn. For this season anyway, it's not Appalachian State the Cajuns have to best to finally be crowned Sun Belt champions. UL will now play Coastal Carolina in Conway, South Carolina on December 19th to decide which program will dethrone the Mountaineers. Only UL must still play Appalachian State at 7:30 p.m. Friday on ESPN back in Boone. Yes, on the way to the championship game, there's still a dark cloud lingering, a puzzle the Cajuns can't seem to solve. No, Coastal being the East champions this season still doesn't give the Cajuns that intensely desired win over the Mountaineers. Most around Cajun country or the Sun Belt region overall figure it was a 2-for-1 special. You finally beat Appalachian State and you win the Sun Belt crown. Not in 2020. If you believe Napier and his players, however, the curveball that is Coastal's emergence won't change the Cajuns' focus in Friday's game. Quote, regardless of maybe their record or where they're at in the division or their national ranking, this is an exceptional team, Napier said of the Mountaineers. They've got unbelievable personnel. They've got an identity in all three phases. They've got a veteran group at the positions that matter the most. Somehow, the biggest target is no longer the most significant one. Yet for this week, anyway, it's still the number one priority. In the meantime, the Cajuns would still like to check a box they've never checked before and beat the Mountaineers. LSU versus Appalachian, it's an important game. Two of the best teams in the entire country, Napier said. We've got a lot of respect for them, and certainly what we see on tape is no different than Appalachian State's in the past. One heck of a football team. One thing is for sure. The Mountaineers aren't in the best moods after the Chanticleers stole the show in the Sun Belt East this season. At this point, their biggest consolation prize is to continue their mastery of the Cajuns. Somehow, the team that's never lost in this series might actually be the one with the chip on its shoulder. This isn't how the renewal of this budding rivalry was supposed to go down. Make no mistake, Appalachian State will be ready. They're building it up as the first time a top 20 team has ever visited Kid Brewer Stadium, a place Napier knows all too well as a former Furman player and now enemy coach, as well as a venue the Mountaineers program takes great pride in. Nothing really changed, Appalachian State coach Sean Clark said. It's going to be a fight. Every time we played them, it's been a very physical battle. We've been fortunate enough to come out on top the last few years. We're 8-0 against those guys. It's going to be a great battle. The Cajuns are about to find out if the most dangerous version of the Mountaineers is a spurned one. They're one of the best teams we've played in a long time, much like they've always been in the past, Napier said. To check off all the boxes in this special season, however, That's also lingering matter of never having performed a victory dance after playing Appalachian State. We're still chasing our best football and trying to get hot at the right time. Certainly, with our next two opponents, we'll need to be at our best. Indeed, a tricky pair of games is left for the Cajuns. All right, our last sports headline of the day and our last headline of the morning is Napier expects weather to be a big factor versus the Mountaineers. Again, looking at UL football, brought to you by Kevin Foote. In UL coach Billy Napier's first 2 seasons with the Ragin' Cajuns, he's made 3 trips to Boone, North Carolina, experiencing various weather conditions. One time it was really cold and sleeting, and the last one was a clear and sunny 45 degrees. The forecast on Friday's 7:30 p.m. rematch with Appalachian State at Kidd Brewer Stadium is 37 degrees and an 80% chance of rain. Quote, "It's part of the variables in the game," Napier said. "It'll affect the game. We all know that it could change as we approach the game." Napier said it's routine for coaching staff to install contingency plans based on weather conditions. Fortunately for UL, simulating colder weather has been easier this week. Mother Nature is cooperating a little bit, Napier said. "We've got a couple of cool days here. We'll get outside and get under the lights a little bit and try and simulate some of that stuff. Our kids are not in school, so we're able to adapt our schedule to do some of that type of stuff." The actual field conditions aren't a big concern, Napier said. The team brought multiple shoes to Iowa State on the natural grass in September. The artificial turf in Boone is more predictable. "I think the personnel matchups and the conceptual matchups will be as big as a factor and probably more of a factor than the actual weather," he said. "It's part of the game. It's part of playing there." And of course, ASU coach Sean Clark is hoping for the worst of it. Quote, "Hopefully, it rains, sleets, snows, all of the above," said Clark, who said his team practiced outdoors all week to prepare despite having an indoor facility. "That's part of what we're made for." And if you're interested in watching the game, it is going to be at 7:30 p.m. this Friday. It is airing on television on ESPN, and you can catch it on the radio on KHXT FM, that's 107.9, and then KPEL AM, which is going to be on your dial at 1420. And that is going to be all of the news for today. Thank you for having me and for listening in, and have a great day, Acadiana.